Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. We can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. We got CPI coming up here. Hold on a second. How come I'm not getting... Okay, well, you're hearing the music, so I think we're okay on that front. I must just not have voice meters set up correctly or something. I am. There we go. All right, we got CPI in a few seconds here. About a minute to go. This could be the most consequential CPI. One of these next few CPIs, I think, is going to surprise us in some way. But we'll see if this one ends up being consequential or not. And I apologize, I am a little bit like my workspace is a little bit messed up. I changed which monitor was the primary monitor, and NinjaTrader doesn't seem to be taking it very well. But we can fix that in a little bit. Okay, here we go. Boom, that's higher at least initially. At least initial. Core month over month in line with expectations at spot 3. And headline CPI month over month in line at spot 2. So we are higher. It looks like, you know, in line is good. I did see, you know, when we go through the charts here in a second, we did see a lot of like hedging going into it. So the dollar getting creamed here and yields going up. Sorry, not yields going up. Treasuries going up, yields going down. All right, hold on a second. I just gotta... Oh, that's not what I wanted. Gotta remember the key bindings here for this. Oh, I remember I had to turn this off. was like Windows. Oh, there we go. Free just joined. Was news perceived as good for equities? Yes. So we're up good, solid. Let's see here. 30 points or so. But, you know, again, there was some selling going into this. Oh, man, I crashed Ninja Trader, I think. Yeah, I can't even get the control center to come up. Wow, it crashed on its own before I even end tasked to it. That's crazy. It was good, but it was in line with expectations. So, got to be careful about the retracement on this one, right? I just killed it. Where did it go? There. Okay. Daily chart. Oh, I got that one good. Okay. So, coming to the chart, you can see here, going into the CPI, by the way, yesterday, very, very quiet, but going into the CPI, kind of selling. So I think people hedging for possible inflation didn't get it. Number goes up. I think this time around, you're going to hear a lot of front angling and coping and so forth in social media about whether the number is rigged or not, because liberals now, because Donald Trump fired the BLS secretary or commissioner, BLS commissioner, they now think that all of the data is rigged. S&P 500 doing well. We're still in a little bit of a trough here, though. I am concerned, like, the summer should be fine, but I am concerned once we come out of the summer, that fall time period tends to be a weak period for equities, and we could see a big rout. We seem primed for it. Here is oil. Oil still off a little bit down, so that's good. I'm not sure if that holds, but that's good. Gold down pretty big from a few days ago, at least. Silver, also similar story, but still faring pretty well. Copper still reeling from that head fake that they got over there. Man, there's got to be some traders in copper that are super pissed, right? And then we got the Japanese yen. He's doing pretty good. We don't want the Japanese yen to fall too far, right? Then you get big problems. Here's the dollar. You can see the dollar been looking pretty weak lately. And finally, Bitcoin. Bitcoin had a little bit of a run, but not to new highs quite yet. We'll see. I think we probably remain in this range for a while, though. Let's see here. How do I feel about the picture here? That should be good enough. I feel like it was closer. Whatever. Seems like they're settling at 112 even. So a pretty big retracement, but not a full retracement. I think we could turn on our algorithm here. Yeah. Musk accuses Apple of unequivocal antitrust violation for favoring OpenAI and App Store rankings. Okay. I'll go get so long here. Now look at that. If we had had it on before the CPI, we would have taken a short and made money on it. Trump praises Intel CEO after previously calling for his resignation. All you gotta do is bow to the king, and then he'll sing your praises, and everything's good. How it works. With a new boss looming at the BLS, one wonders what the old boss has in hand for today's CPI data. After June's consumer prices came in cooler than expected, disappointing the Trump tariff tantrum crowd. Will this time be different? Will the dreaded tarifflation show up this time? Well, headline CPI rose spot 2% month over month in July and 2.7% year over year. Cooler than the 2.8% expected and in line with the prior June print. Headline CPI rose spot 2 after rising spot 3 in June. CPI rose spot 3 in July following a spot 2% increase in June. Indexes that increased over the month include medical care, airline fares, recreation, household furnishings and operations, and used cars and trucks. The indexes for lodging away from home and communication were among the few major indexes that decreased in July. Core CPI rose spot 3% month over month as expected, but year over year rose 3.1%, hotter than the 3% expected, to the highest since February. Under the hood, fuel, oil, and transportation costs rose the most, but gasoline and food at home costs fell month over month. Shelter increased spot 2%. The index for owner's equivalent rose spot 3% in July, as did the index for rent. Conversely, the lodging away from home index fell 1% in July. Medical care index increased spot 7% over the month, following a 0.5% increase in June. I'm a little bit concerned about medical inflation. Like, the boomers are retiring and prices are going to go up. Like, it's already kind of happening, right? Spot 7% is high. Index for airline fares increased 4% month over month after declining spot 1%. That can't be right. Recreation index increased spot 4%. Index for used cars and trucks rose spot 5%. New vehicles index was unchanged. Used cars going up. That's interesting. Supercore CPI, which is services X shelter, rose spot 5% month over month and up 3.59 year over year. It's the hottest since February, but still down considerably from where it was earlier. So not exactly the screaming spike in prices that Democrats interviewed by the University of Michigan have hallucinated about. The new BLS commissioner will not be fired today, says Zero Hedge. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if we get another move here in the Treasuries or not. At the moment, they're kind of saying to me, yeah, it's summer. We did our thing. Let us go back to sleep now. And that's what I should do, is go back to sleep. something's been happening in Discord where there is like a new slew of accounts that are able to get through all of my filters, and it's really pissing me off. And for some reason, when they post, it doesn't necessarily show me.
Order canceled.
Okay, interesting. So it didn't like that. Well, that worked. You know, that's a good place to get out, I suppose. It does seem like, you know, that's the end of that move. No. Find it really curious. Like, I remember the IRC days, and there was just so much spam, and eventually everything turned into, how do we defeat spam? And then Discord comes along, and they just, sometimes they seem so ill prepared for dealing with the spam, and I don't get it. Like, I thought that part of the reason Discord was being successful was because they had it, you know, kind of having the centralized accounts and everything dealt with the spam, but then it hasn't actually been like that. Are you full-time? Hell no. Whoa. Dude, full-time trader sounds like a nightmare. Especially, let me tell you what, you find somebody, they're in futures and they say that they're a full-time trader, they're either extremely naive or pulling your leg. Oh, are you in a trade? The robot is in a trade. It's not a very good trade though, is it? It got head faked on, well, it caught this pullback. Oh, actually, I'm wrong. That was a buy. So it's going to be wrong 3 times here. So, after a CPI, I would expect, potentially the robot to do okay. But I'm thinking that kind of what's going on here is really more like people rolling off hedges and so forth that they had going before the news and everything. So like you're really seeing counterflows. Like as soon as you see a really big impulse up, it starts pulling back. As soon as you see a really big impulse down, it starts going up, you see? So the robot is going to be really streaky because we haven't been able to implement regime change switching yet. So right now it seems like we are in a counter trend, or sorry, a mean reversion regime where the robot is dead wrong every time. But we're going to continue to run it to collect data and things like that. But that's what this over here is. Wow. I think, yeah, there was a buy and then there was a sell. Oh, and it looks like it's still in the sell. That's interesting. Okay, well, I don't know. I myself, though, I don't really see an opportunity. Maybe if I were to take a trade, maybe it would be buy on the hopes that it goes back to 112 again. But that one's probably not worth the risk. So I think we just kind of sit tight here a little bit. I don't know. Is there a ton to talk about in the market? Oh, now it's getting a buy impulse again, huh? I saw an interesting article yesterday on Zero Hedge that kind of picked up on something that I kind of been watching but forgotten about, and I'm glad that it kind of reminded me that, like, right now, the big thing has been the artificial intelligence revolution. And it's kind of funny the way that people in the media works, because all of the discussion has been about the artificial intelligence side of it and chatbots. And there's hardly been any discussion at all about, well, what happens when you see similar leaps in robotics? And Zero Hedge had an article yesterday pointing out that, like, they're very close to something like that happening. That essentially they're taking the same kind of machine learning advancements that they've made to be able to make the chatbots, and now they're applying it to regular robotics, and you're getting to the place where you could have, like a servant robot that like does your laundry and stuff. So I think that if there's a place that's like, because a lot of things too high, right? But one place to maybe invest, especially if we get a drawdown in the fall, I think that robot maids would be the play, right? Yes, at home robot maids. I am so excited for iRobot. Yeah, exactly, man. And a robot maid that can talk to you too, with the chatbot. I think the thing, and I think that it was kind of a foolish expectation on many people's parts, but the whole thing is that the way that we got these large language models, like we had this thing, this technology for like predicting text, right? And what they found was that when you scale that up really, really big and you do reinforcement learning on it, and you do a lot of reinforcement learning, that the emergent property behavior, the emergent behavior that you get from all of that complexity is you get a chatbot that sounds very human. So I think there was this assumption from people that if we continue to size it up, that we'll continue to get these emergent behaviors. And basically what happened with ChatGPT 5 is that didn't happen. There's maybe some things that are better about it, but it's kind of incremental and people are a little disappointed. And now people are gearing up for the Google Gemini 3 release. I think that, probably will be better. It really, like the indications are that Gemini 3 will be better than GPT 5. But I think people will still be disappointed. So, we've had this, what some people are calling an AI bubble. I think that probably a lot of companies are going to realize, this can't quite do what we want it to do. The automating all tasks sort of a thing, it's not going to happen. We need some sort of other major innovation to get there. And all of that money that had been gone into that is going to be written off. And the timing is right, that if that were, to really pick up steam in the fall, that you could have a pretty big market rout in the fall. And then when you're coming out of it, then I think you invest in robotics. And watch a similar cycle play out in robotics. It'll be like, we'll have all these robots that can do these amazing things, but then we'll find out that it's just not, it's too expensive. Something like that. Well, it looks like it's falling again. Watch, we'll get another. Well, and we just had a relatively large sell, so maybe it's
Order
already.
canceled.
Yeah, there we go. All right, now that it's going short, it's gonna flip back around and go long, or the market will. Watch. It's gonna be wrong 4 times in a row. I suppose we are like getting close to the expiration month, like 3 weeks. So that would be where I would expect it to be kind of mean reversion-y. Man, I had a thread here I wanted to read, and I just lost it. Was somebody basically saying, all of the edge in the world, you'll still lose if you don't have the psychology? And their first first sentence was, well, strategy is not just chart indicators and blah 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 blah. And it's like, oh boy. So here we have somebody that doesn't really understand what real edge looks like now again. Let me tell you something. When you see professional traders execute where they have like a real institutional edge, really makes you approach the things that we tend to look at as retail traders differently, right? Like, they would have information where they would know that certain things were going to happen before it hit the market. They had lean time on some of these things. Like, they knew what was going to happen. They had a really good idea about what certain news events were going to be. They can come in, their advantage is execution. They can execute a block trade with somebody, then go and execute it on the open market and get a better price than what they executed for it over here, right? Like that's a real edge. And that's a very different thing from, well, I think that because this, and this, that we have a higher percentage chance of moving up than moving down. Silly. The whole psychology thing is really just a cope to convince people that have strategies that don't actually work to keep going. Blame it on your psychology and not on the strategy that doesn't actually work. That's all it is. Let's see here. Well, we did get like the down, right? And we did get a big buy right after it, but it didn't go very far. I love how religious about psychology some people get. It can get funny. Yeah. Well, because ultimately technical analysis is really a theory of psychology, right? The real, the traditional definition of technical analysis is everything that's not fundamental analysis, right? But when you look at technical analysis in practice, what it really is the theory that people's psychology plays out in the market data. That's really what technical analysis is. And this is why I harp on the psychology so much, because the data, the actual data, kind of suggests otherwise. The actual, of course, when we're getting into the data, there's still theories. Like, we can see a certain stylized behavior, and why do we see that stylized behavior? And it's always going to be a theory about why we see that stylized behavior. You can't. That's not something that I think you can conclusively prove, per se. But you can certainly, one of the ways that we do it is we generate a model, and then we see if that model reflects the actual market data, right? And when you go and you build models based on these kinds of like psychology-based ideas, they're not able to reproduce the stylized behaviors that we see in the actual data. Whereas when you take a market microstructure and a complexity approach, you are able to reproduce those stylized behaviors. So the current evidence, at least, suggests that the odd behaviors in the market that do exist are largely due to the structure of the market, the way the rules are set up, and how that just kind of interacts with fundamental laws of mathematics and nature. And it has absolutely nothing to do with people's psychology. And in fact, I would argue that the psychology is like a coincident indicator. People's psychology tends to reflect what is happening in the market right now, not what is about to happen. So people get fearful because the market has been down. They get greedy because the market has been up. And not the other way around, that the market goes up because people get greedy, etc., etc., etc. I don't think that the data supports that. And so it's just kind of like low-hanging fruit when you get people, they're talking about the psychology. I think it's pretty easy to pop their bubble. Well, look, this is like what a real edge looks like. And when you have a real edge, you can have the worst psychology in the world and still make money. And what you guys are all talking about looks to me more like being fooled by randomness. Think that there's an edge in it. There really isn't. So you're blaming the psychology to avoid having to fess up to the strategy just not working. And they're going to be religious about it because people will build their entire identity around it. You know? I mean, that's really our society at large, right? Is who you are, is what you do for work, at least for men. And then what happens is, you slack off in school, maybe you pick the wrong college major, maybe the thing that you really like to do just doesn't make very much money. Whatever the deal is, you kind of feel like you don't have a very high social status because of what you do for a living. And then you go over and you look at day trading. And it's like, wow, if I can be successful at day trading, I'll be rich. And then I'll be respected because I'm one of the few people that were able to figure out the market. And so now their entire personality, their whole identity is based around the market and their market theory about the way that the market works. And so it all turns into psychology. And that's why they cling to it so hard. It's kind of funny because their very belief that it's all about the psychology actually leads to a situation that will create bad psychology that can make it hard to be successful. Like, I think the two things that will harm your psychology the most is one, this kind of idea that the way that my emotions feel at any one particular moment are an indication of how well I'm going to do in my trading. Because then as soon as you start to feel fearful, you're your trading is just going to go down the toilet, right? And then the other and bigger one is not having an edge. You coming in and you don't actually have an edge and you're trading it thinking that it's your psychology, then all of the signals, all of the things that you can potentially learn from that experience are wrong. Essentially. You're not actually learning anything. Because really what you're doing is you're trading a random line. And that tends to just drive you crazy. Now, we can take it the other way. Doesn't Seth kind of base his identity very largely on he's a market expert? He understands complexity and how these different interactions result in various stylized market behaviors. Well, yes, but the difference here is that understanding why the market behaves the way that it doesn't really give you that same satisfaction, that same feeling that you know, you're better than everybody else. You know, once you really understand what's going on, you realize how little we know, how limited our prediction capabilities are. I spend so much, like, compared, you know, when we started, so I didn't really get into the complexity stuff until at COVID. That's when I kind of read and started to understand market microstructure and the complexity. So we've really been on this for like 5 years now. 3 to 5 years. And the first Trump presidency was before that. We were still streaming, but it was before that, right? I was kind of more, well, news matters, but more focused on just watching and learning the order flow. And you'll notice that I talk about the politics, like individual Trump policy decisions, a lot less now. I'm trying to only talk about it when I think that there's like a real market connection, or I think it's really significant to like the political balance in the country. You know, you come in and something happened and it's really hurting one party and it could potentially flip the balance or at least set the stage for the next election or whatever. Then we talk about those sorts of things, right? But there's some things like this, what was the thing? What's this week? Man, every week Trump's doing something new that Reddit is super upset about. This one, it was tackling crime in DC. They were saying that they were gonna like activate the National Guard to try and get crime under control in DC. Well, I can't tell you if that's going to work. I don't know anything about DC. I don't. Why? Because you're talking about a complex thing. Okay, here you're going to come in and you're going to implement a particular policy prescription, and unless I can like model it out with agent-based modeling, I'm not really sure how that turns out. Could end up being like a huge disaster for him. I don't know. And so I just find myself more and more sitting here going, well, okay, that's interesting. Let's see how that one turns out. And not really trying to, you know, have a super strong opinion on what's going to happen with it. Because I know now how limited our knowledge is because of complexity. The human brain is just not wired for it can't calculate complexity. Can't. You have to use tools. Let's see here. Is it? Oh, no. Now that's interesting. It's getting along here now, huh? It did pretty good on that last one, didn't it? Although, I don't understand why that was a long. I think that that might be a bug. Because we didn't hit... Oh, maybe we hit 53 and it came back down really quickly or something? No.
Order canceled.
Well, it immediately gets a sell. That's curious. That was really, really weird. So anyways, now like identity, I don't know. I feel like identity for me is a little bit in flux. It's like we know something we need to tell the world about it, but that doesn't necessarily say anything about me. What do you think about Battlefield? How did you know that I played Battlefield 6? You know what? When I saw that there was a beta on the weekend, like I went and watched a couple of videos, like I really debated, like, I don't know if I really wanted to get myself involved in another game like that. I was never super huge into the previous Battlefield games. Like I played the demos and stuff, but I don't think I ever bought one of the previous Battlefield games. I played PlanetSide 2 a lot, which plays very much like Battlefield. And I would say that Battlefield 6 in particular really, really plays a lot like PlanetSide. You often run into situations where it kind of becomes a meat grinder around one particular choke point or something like that. But Battlefield, I think, has kind of evolved and dealt with some of the problems. They did the thing that always drove me crazy about PlanetSide, which was that to capture an area, you have to be like sitting on this little radar thing. So like the spot that you have to sit on to capture a point is super, super tiny. And you've basically already cleared the area out by the time that happens. Whereas in Battlefield 6, capture points are an area. And there's like an area with lots of places to hide and hunker down and everything. And so you can kind of have a battle going on where there are multiple people on both sides in that area for several minutes before you're able to clear it out and take the area over. So that really, really improves it, right? So, but with Battlefield, I don't know. I'm thinking now, can I tie this back to the market? I don't know if I can. But the thing that's interesting to me about Battlefield is the moment. You know what I mean? Like, I think that Battlefield is making people realize all of the things that other games like Battle Royale games don't have. You know what I mean? Like Battlefield 6 has action. You're gonna get in there, you're gonna see action. Whereas these Battle Royale games are kind of like, well, you can go to the area where everybody's at, but you can go to the quiet area and you can be playing for like 10 minutes before you see another player if you play it a certain way, you know? Like, I feel like that a lot of the shooter games that have come along in particular, they just don't have the same kind of action. And Battlefield 6, it has that in spades. Because it's not just, it's not just that there's action, but like the environment is completely destructible too. So it's just like complete chaos going on around you the whole time. So it was fun. And I think there are a lot of people playing it. I think that the release will probably go really well. Question will be, how much longevity does it have, right? Because what tends to happen with Battlefield, remember that what tends to happen with Battlefield is it does really, really well at first, and then they change something, and people don't like the new patch, or they break something that's so bad, and then everybody leaves and stops playing it. That's what tends to happen in Battlefield. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think enough to get me into playing video games every night again. I think it might be a couple of years before I get into regularly playing shooter games again. You know? But it was fun for the weekend. Well, they're pushing down a little bit more now. Interesting. The 30-year is really selling hard. The 10-year is starting to sell a decent amount as well, but in the 30-year, it looks really, really steep. Now, part of that is the Japanese yen has not completely retraced, so I think we're getting some pressure from the yen, but we're definitely getting selling flows here. It kind of looks to me, well, I thought, okay, a lot of people are going to wait for the CPI, and then, you know, we didn't get anything too big, so you're just going to see anybody that was hedged into the CPI take their hedges off, which was probably a lot of the buying afterwards. But it kind of looks to me like somebody took advantage of this market after the news to sell the treasuries. There's a real significant sell meta order that came through. And we're also seeing a lot more imbalances in the tape. You know, like in my market order imbalance indicator. A lot more of those than usual. So something weird is going on. Do you think that they've got another, like, so the robot is short at the moment, but it's only by like a tick or two, so I don't know if there's enough selling to come through here for it to get anything out of it, you know? Would say this is definitely the most interesting session we've had in a while, isn't it? It was a good one. I don't know. I don't know if Seth has been that interesting this session, but the market has been interesting this session. And I think it's good for our one stream. Our one stream this week. What do we got next week, by the way? Ooh, Jackson Hole Symposium starts. That's what I need to do is go up and visit Jackson Hole. S&P 500, first 2 minutes here. Little unclear, though, what they're actually going to do. Their sellers seem to be winning out at the moment, but it's still very, very tepid over there. I do wonder, when I looked at those numbers, you know, I kind of felt, hey, Kevin, how you doing? Kind of felt when it was diving into the numbers, it's like, okay, yeah, CPI is in line with expectations, But the parts of the CPI that were going up versus down were not the ones that you wanted to see. There were some areas that still have a lot of inflation going on. So I don't think that the headline number was as good as it appears. Maybe that's why they came in and sold it, was that some people came along afterwards and said, well, but this is not actually, this kind of suggests that inflation is a real concern for the near future. That, the lag is just 6 months, but that you are going to see some serious inflation that could potentially prevent the Federal Reserve from cutting interest rates too much. But this goes back to this bigger thing that I've been trying to argue. It kind of really irks me that I don't see as much discussion about this as I think that there should be in the online economic community. But if you get inflation from tariffs, I don't think that means you raise interest rates, right? Because the whole thing about raising interest rates is that raising interest rates makes money harder. People can't borrow as much. They can't invest as much into new businesses, right? So you raise interest rates to kind of pull back an economy that's getting too hot. The raising the rates does not necessarily do anything to the prices themselves, right? What affects the prices themselves? Supply and demand. Supply and demand is what affects the prices themselves. And raising interest rates is basically moderating the demand, right? If the higher prices are coming primarily from supply changing their prices and everything, and not necessarily from too much demand, then raising interest rates doesn't accomplish anything. All you're doing is basically just killing the economy. And you're going to create a recession. I'm worried that the Federal Reserve has kept it too high for too long, that we will see a recession. And if we did, it would probably be around October. I don't think that that's the majority case yet, but it was concern on my mind. I think that right now we are absolutely in a recession of some sort. I don't think that you could say, like 2 quarters of negative GDP growth or anything like that. But if you look at individual sectors, we've definitely had individual sectors with negative GDP, with negative growth, and sectors with negative employment growth, which is why it seems like nobody can get a job. I tell you what, man, I see so much stuff this week about, computer science is this terrible industry to be in now. And all the people that were kind of jealous of the computer scientists and were complaining about everybody berating them for that they should have gone into CS instead of doing something else. And now they're all taking their victory lap. See, CS is not so great now. Well, yeah, because we're in a recession. Everything sucks, man. Everything sucks. Show me one industry where people are just, if you get an interview, you're going to get hired. Doesn't exist right now. A recession. And we're going to raise interest rates? I was like, what? Some people want to raise interest rates. Of course, the Federal Reserve is smarter than that. But man, this is just crazy. Crazy take. Huh. Interest rates affect the economic growth and not necessarily the prices of things. And there are some situations where the price is going to go up and there's nothing you can do about it.
Order canceled.
Okay, so it is getting a long impulse again. This one could really, really be a head fake. I'm interested to see how this one turns out. We got, 20 minutes left? So I do think we may have overdone it on the short side. we are getting a little bit of a buy. So like this would be a good mean reversion long setup for sure. This would be a good mean reversion long setup. And you know, this one, it's got a little bit more to go. So some of these were this one, the one that it made money on was, I kind of feel like it was kind of got lucky, to be honest with you. Although, looking at this, I thought that we were, oh, okay, no. That was long, then it went short. It would, like, got a short signal, like, shortly after that. Now it's finally getting a long signal again. Okay. So this is a signal that kind of is more in line with what I think that the market might do on like the higher time frame. So it'll be interesting to see if it works out or if it ends up being another counter signal and we go lower. Because if we do go lower, it's going to be a little eye-popping, because then you're really breaking like the lower end of the range and everything. Like you probably see a lot of stops and things like that if they made another new low. What? Google's Gemini AI tells a Redditor it is cautiously optimistic about fixing a coding bug, but fails repeatedly, calls itself an embarrassment to all possible and impossible universes before repeating, "I am a disgrace," 86 times in succession. A Reddit thread about an article over Reddit thread. Must have been trained on Japanese parenting books. And they had just sent an email to their customers about how they were dramatically raising prices because of all the value Gemini brings. Jeez. Interesting story. Oh yeah, I have this tab open. Next stream will be next Friday, the 22nd. Don't worry though, we get to see this trade that the robot is in fail first, right? Then we go. And then you have to wait until the 22nd. LLM simulated reasoning abilities are a brittle mirage, researchers find. Yeah, so something I'm seeing. So let me make a crazy prediction about Reddit. I think Reddit's days are numbered. So the big story this week in Reddit is the internet is about to get a little worse as Reddit moves to block the internet archive so AI companies can't scrape its content. So a lot of the time, people would use the internet archive to save websites so that if they changed the website, you could still see what it was to prove that a certain thing was said or happened or whatever the deal was. And also to show like the crazy things that Redditors will say before the moderators come in and delete all the comments. And so Reddit is disabling the Internet Archive under the guise that it's so that the AI companies can't scrape its content. Granted, I wouldn't think that an AI company would be scraping the Internet Archives instead of Reddit itself. Sure does seem there was this article showing that like they got most of their content from Reddit. Which maybe explains a lot of the problems with them, but whatever. Something I find LLM is really good at is summarizing to you what the research says, essentially. You start asking it about research. You say, is there research on this, this, or this? It's very good. It's very good at that. Because it was trained on research, right? So like half of the struggle of using LLMs is crafting a query so that it will go and derive from good sources rather than Reddit. So really, if the AI companies could just stop using Reddit in their training, I think that we'd be better off. You got an uptick there. Didn't hold, but there was an iceberg. That's interesting. Trump posting on Truth Social that Powell needs to cut rates. They're gonna sell on that? Okay. Oh, he's saying that he might sue Powell. He's allowing a major lawsuit against Feds. Okay. So the dollar is dropping, and that seems to be pulling the treasuries with it. That's why I think we're seeing selling in the treasuries. So, you know what? I think that the setup and everything that the robot had was interesting, but I think that event kind of nulls and voids it. I'm going to let it continue to do its thing so that we can see, you know, if it gets an exit here or something like that. But if I had been trading that one, I would be cutting it off right now. Fast sell in oh yeah. Oh wow. Oh man. That just erased all of the gains from the open. That's about 15 points. Market did not like that. You know what though, when he says something like that, especially when it feels like it's really coming out of the blue, like a lawsuit, okay, that's not something I had heard of before. I don't see how that would even work. It's probably a trial balloon. And I think that trial balloon did not go very well. So maybe they won't do that one. Maybe they won't do that one. Fingers crossed. I don't know. Robot's still holding on to it. All of the news trading robots, I think, are going to get really screwed up by that one. I don't know. I could be wrong. To me, it's kind of like a nothing burger, but you are going to see flows off of it. So like maybe it's best to get out of the position. But ultimately, it's a nothing burger. So like, I don't know. But I could be wrong. It could be like actually does have a measurable, especially if that actually goes forward. But you sue over interest. I don't know. How would that work? What would you sue him over? Wait. So that last tick down kind of hurt, even though it wasn't a ton of volume. They could succumb here. I think that there could be... You know what? Let's try. Well, how much time do we have left? I think it's too late for me to mess with this. Kind of tempted to put in like a stop limit in here somewhere. Okay. So I don't know if I would have put it stop limit at 22.5 or 22, but if I put it at 22.5, I would have just gotten filled. That last down tick is looking a little better. There's a stack. The 22 isn't giving up. They're going to want the fills probably. Doesn't hold. Oh, that was a strong stack on the down tick again. There you go. Okay, so 1869, actually a little bit less than I thought it would take. So are we in stop city now? Well,
Order canceled.
okay. Okay. Well, it finally triggered the robot short, so I don't know if that's a good sign for it to continue to go down here, right? Should we recenter there? Right there. I'm still really curious to know, like, what is the case? They're gonna sue. They're gonna sue Powell. What are they gonna? Because part of me kind of thinks that like nothing's gonna come from it. That you're never gonna see the lawsuit. But if like a lawsuit gets unveiled later today, you know what, let's go read the thing. Jerome, too late. Powell must now lower the rate. Steve Mnuchin really gave me a beauty when he pushed this loser. The damage he has done by always being too late is incalculable. Fortunately, the economy is so good that we've blown through Powell and the complacent board. I am, though, considering allowing a major lawsuit against Powell to proceed because of the horrible and grossly incompetent job he has done in managing the construction of the Fed buildings. $3 billion for a job that should have been a $50 million fix-up. Oh, really? They're saying that it's a $3 billion job? Okay, so I should have anticipated that it would be over the construction of the building. And then can you sue him personally for that? Maybe I don't know. But that's not going to do anything about the interest rate, is it? So I'm more convinced that it's a nothing burger, but like just reading the tenor of his voice, not his voice, but the wording of it and everything, I think that the market is going to give it like a lot of attention. So yeah. Does that put us in sell mode for the rest of the day? Well, I don't know. See, you could see like sell pressure, and it just kind of never go anywhere, and then the traders giving up on it and letting it come back up. We'll see. But I'm not going to be here to find out because I got to get going, guys. So it was fun. I'm going to spend the rest of the week doing more programming. It's slow going, man. With Rust, it's slow going. But we're making slow, steady progress. I feel like I'm understanding these frameworks in particular a lot better. So I think by the time we're done with this, I'll be in a pretty good spot. So then we'll see if it actually results in a good I didn't get data. I think the big thing holding me back right now is data. I was in some talks with some people about data, but I haven't heard back from them. So maybe I need to go and message them again. But so again, the next stream will be on the 22nd. So this is this week's stream. So no stream Friday. We'll have the next stream the Friday after that on the 22nd. So that's a big break. That's what we're going to do, the 22nd. So see you guys then. I might have a video out in between here and there on this amazing laptop docking station I've got here. So hopefully, so keep an eye out for that. See you guys on the 22nd. In the meantime, stay excellent.